Owning a home in Sydney has become a pipe dream for many, with ownership rates dropping to their lowest level in about 70 years. The research by accounting firm KPMG shows Sydney home ownership's rates dropped to just under 60% in 2025, down sharply when compared to the previous national census levels of over 61%. KPMG analysis combined 2021 census and ABS housing survey statistics with rental bond data to estimate the current owner-occupier rates in the city and actually nationally as well. KPMG urban economist Terry Rawnsley joins me. Terry Rawnsley, thank you for making the time. It's probably not a huge surprise to Sydney-siders, given it's the most expensive city to buy a home. But your research shows the city has not seen home ownership rates this low since the 1950s. Can you give us some context? What do the figures show?
Yeah, and what we've seen is that 15 years ago, Sydney wasn't far off the rest of Australia's home ownership rate. And the last 15 years have really seen a big drop-off in home ownership rates in Sydney. And that's just reflecting how unaffordable it is for Sydney-siders to get into the housing market. But it's also reflecting that there's more affordable options for people in Queensland, in Victoria, in Western Australia. And part of the ability to work from anywhere that came out of COVID has meant people have been able to pick up their careers and leave Sydney and get into more cheaper housing markets in Brisbane or Melbourne or Perth.
Well, nationally, what does your research show? What are the home ownership rates looking like across the rest of the country?
Yeah, and what we saw between 2001 and 2005 is that Queensland and Western Australia had an increase in their home ownership rates. And this probably happened during that 2020, 2021 window when house prices were probably half what they are now in those cities. Interest rates were virtually zero. So people took that opportunity to get into the housing market in large numbers. So we've seen a real shift across the country in terms of Queensland and WA picking up speed. Victoria and Melbourne kind of held steady over that period. Melbourne's produced a lot of affordable housing for first-home buyers in the western northern growth areas. So that's been a way to show that housing supply at the right price point can get people into home ownership.
And when we look at the comparison between Sydney and other places across the country, what are the percentage levels showing, and what would be sort of the peak when we did see home ownership levels at their highest in Australia?
Yeah, so we kind of, in 1996, so about 30 years ago, we had home ownership rates a touch under 70%. Now we're kind of in the low 60s across most of the country. So to provide some context, if we'd held that 1996 rate constant today, we'd have about an extra 500,000 households in home ownership rather than renters. And obviously Sydney's kind of ground zero for that challenging housing market.
Yeah, because as your research shows, it's sitting at 59.9% in terms of the owner-occupier levels. What do we know about how this is going to be addressed? We know affordability is a hurdle. The government's trying to hit a housing target of 1.2 million new dwellings by 2029, although we're not there yet. Will the supply help? The budget tax changes around investment tax breaks in property?
Yeah, and I think what's happened over the last 30 years is that the housing system has been broken in so many ways. Supply's been constrained, the tax settings haven't been helpful for first home buyers. Our cities were sprawled out and some of our newer suburbs lack the infrastructure and local services that people are looking for. So I think we've kind of diagnosed the problem. It's going to take time for a whole range of planning reforms across Sydney in particular to get more housing coming out of the ground. But the challenge is even reforms made today, it will take 1 or 2 years for homes to be built. And it'll take sort of 5 to 10 years to really dig into the backlog of the housing shortage. So this is not a solution that's going to happen overnight through one policy lever. It's really going to take 5 to 10 years of a lot of hard work and a bit of good luck to get more people into their own homes.
Well, the next sort of flashpoint, I guess, is the census is taking place this year. We'll obviously get the results at a later date. Will that help paint a clearer picture of the current state of home ownership?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we undertook this research is that the most recent censuses 5 years old. The most recent housing survey from the ABS is 6 years old. So there has been a bit of a gap. And this research, by pulling together the rental bond data to give us estimates about home ownership, is really helping people understand what's happening. And I think it's probably a little bit of good news for those Western Australian and Queensland Victorian markets that show that you can get home ownership rates ticking up again. But it's kind of, once again, just zeroed in on Sydney being ground zero of the housing crisis in this country.
No surprises there. Terry Rawnsley, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.